Posloucháte nový podcast Czech Space News, který vám přináší agentura Czech Invest a ministerstvo dopravy.
What are the odds that this will happen and that the European astronaut might be the first, like the next first person on the moon before the Americans maybe?
It is safe to assume that the next one in this decade will be an American and probably not a European. However, what I really would like to achieve is that a European, not too far in the future, will also have the footsteps left on the moon's surface. And that's exactly what I want to achieve, to have a European astronaut on the moon before the end of this decade.
8, 7, 6.
Panenko skáková, to snad není možné.
5, 4.
A teď prosím vás všichni, co nás sledujete, držte palce.
3, 2, 1, stop. Stop. Allumage contrôleur. Allumage bulletin. Allumage des EAP, décollage.
Okay, Mr. Aschbacher, welcome to Czech Space News. Thanks for having us here. We know you had a quite tight schedule, so thank you for your time.
Thank you for being with you. It's very exciting to be in the Czech Republic.
First, let's begin with a little story, and it is: there is a year 2035, and the third European citizen is about to land on the moon. It is the last training mission before the next great leap, setting foot on the Phobos, moon of the planet Mars. This is an opening story of the Agenda 2025. The story, all names, characters, and incidents portrayed in this production are fictions, until we decide to make it happen together. The question is, who is together?
Together is you and me and many others. Together really is the European landscape at large. And this is exactly what I would like to raise to the politicians, but also to the people, that space is so important for the European economy, but also for Europe as a continent to have ambitions and to engage on this ambition together. And therefore together really is everyone around the table and outside this table, because we need to work together to make big things happen. And I would like to be able to create these dreams and these visions for Europe, to have an identity, to have a dream, to have a vision, but also to have a project to go to, because space is serving so many needs of society, not only the dreams, but also needs of society every single day.
Big vision, that's great.
Yeah, it is. I like the idea that we're going to help to get to Phobos too. But we're going to mention quite a lot the Agenda 2025 of European Space Agency. And there was one point which really caught our interest. And here I quote, the ESA will negotiate with NASA to land the first European on the surface of the moon. So what are the odds that this will happen and that the European astronaut might be the first, like the next first person on the moon before the Americans maybe?
It is safe to assume that the next one in this decade will be an American and probably not a European. However, what I really would like to achieve is that a European, not too far in the future, will also have the footsteps left on the moon's surface, a lady or a man, or we have to be very clear that there is no bias one way or another. But certainly this is a negotiation which we lead with NASA right now. Of course, this needs decisions of the future. Decisions in ESA are made at ministerial conferences. We have the next big ministerial conference coming in November next year. And there I will put a package on the table where we provide some contributions to NASA, and in exchange we get a right, if I may say, of a European astronaut to the moon, and that's exactly what I want to achieve, to have a European astronaut on the moon before the end of this decade.
If I may, what exchanges can we expect? Or
these are what we call barter agreements, exchanges where we provide some hardware. Already today, we are providing the European Service Module, for example, or IHAP, to mention another example, which are essential elements for the Artemis program and the gateway which NASA is building up. So without these modules, NASA could not fly astronauts to the moon in general, and our contribution is a very important aspect. So we have a number of such elements, hardware, which we provide to NASA in exchange today for astronauts going to the gateway and to the ISS. And as I say, we need to further negotiate some of these hardware contributions to get a European astronaut to the moon.
And there are planned 3 Artemis missions right now, 1, 2, 3. Third should be that one with landing another people on the surface of the moon. How many Artemis missions can we expect? Because, for example, the service modules for the Orion, there are many of them ordered, let's say. So how many missions can we expect after the number 3 Artemis?
That is probably going on for a while. I mean, at the moment we have, as you say, some 6, 7 missions planned with commitments being prepared. But I would assume that this is not a temporary activity, but this is going on, bringing astronauts to the moon for years or maybe decades to come. So therefore, yes, it goes in steps, and therefore we have now the first phase, if I may say so, but there will be other phases coming in the future. So I would expect that this is certainly something that will develop into more of a routine cooperation, where routinely we provide some hardware like the European Service Module, and in exchange we routinely or more routinely bring astronauts to the gateway and to the moon. So yes, we do it in phases, but I certainly hope that this is a long-term engagement.
It's probably the most fascinating stuff, landing on the surface of the moon, maybe the red planet. So that's the reason why are we asking. so
it's fascinating, and it certainly is very exciting. But there are other fascinations yet to come, which go beyond. And you have quoted before an astronaut going to Phobos and Mars and beyond. So, of course, we are working in this direction, but this takes a little more time.
When you land on Phobos, please do not jump. Don't try it.
This is true. Otherwise, you're jumping off. Difficult to get you back.
3, 2, 1, top.
I'm just thinking out loud, like it used to be a race to get to the moon first. Now we're kind of talking about the order of getting there too, like first probably, or most probably the Americans, then probably the European. Is it going to be the same with the red planet, with Mars, that there will be some kind of like, a little bit negotiating, like maybe guys, next time, we left you go to the moon for a second time first, and then the red planet is ours.
There will certainly be a race of some kind, and that may not only be between America and Europe. It may also be, there may other parties join as well in this race, China, Russia, maybe, and possibly others. So yes, there will certainly be a huge, prestigious trophy to bring home if you are the first one on Mars. And of course, we are talking here a much longer time frame. This is certainly in the next decade, or maybe even towards the end of the next decade, because there's a lot of technology yet to be developed. But yes, I would like that Europe is playing in this game, and that Europe is playing a very strong role in this game. And this is exactly at the core of Agenda 2025, which you quoted here, that Europe has to gear up, has to consider what space is worth for Europe, not only going to Mars, in general, for its people and for its economy. And yes, this is something that I would like to raise to the heads of governments and heads of state and say, look, this is happening outside Europe. Do you want Europe to be a real partner in these activities or not? Allow me to step back 500 years in time. When America was discovered, what we know today as America, at that time, a few countries were sending ships to America. And we all know that they have gained a lot by doing so. And today we are a bit in the similar situation. If you would be 500 years ago, and if you know you would be capable of sending a ship to America, why would you decide not to do that? And that's exactly the situation we have today. We are capable in Europe of building a rocket that goes to the moon and Mars. Of course, we need to invest in technology and so on, but we are capable of doing it. Why would we decide not to do it? Because there is future perspectives there. There's future economic perspectives, strategic perspectives. They are not happening tomorrow. They're happening in the mid to far future. But yes, think of the discovery of America and the people, populating this new continent. It took also a few decades until this really happened, and we have to see this in a similar context.
How much more interesting the race will be with the private companies in the game? Because we're living in really interesting era when there is a commercial flight or crew in space. So, and of course, for example, Elon Musk openly talks about getting to Mars. So it might be even more interesting, not only fighting, between NASA and ESA and China or other programs, but also the companies.
It makes it even more exciting, and I would not exclude that not also in Europe private companies will invest and engage in flights to Moon, Mars, and beyond. I have been at this presentation of Elon Musk where he introduced his vision of going to Mars. Quite fascinating, I have to say. But I also remember that he said in 2024 he wants to be on Mars with people. 2024 is tomorrow. I don't see this yet happening. But still, having the vision and expressing an ambition is great. And I think this has stimulated a lot of thinking and a lot of activities in many domains. And yes, there will be a race also involving private companies and commercial companies. And certainly that's something I would like Europe also to participate in.
I have a quote. Again, we want Europe to benefit from space as much as the US and China. It's from Agenda, the quote. What are those benefits, mostly? What are those benefits?
There are huge benefits. If you just take daily life. In daily life, you're using a lot of information from satellites or using satellites to find your way or to communicate. Earth observation, weather forecasts, navigation, telecommunication or satellite communication are in daily life. Stock markets depend on satellite communication. If you would switch off all these satellites for one day, the world would collapse. And your life would be a very different one. So yes, there is already a huge use of satellites in daily life, in daily infrastructure. And this goes into billions of economic value because the whole car navigation industry, the whole telecommunications industry, the stock markets, weather, farmers, fishermen, natural disasters, they all depend on information coming from space, or where space is playing one part of the role, not everything, but a certain part of the role. So yes, space is integrated into the economy, and this is recognized. Actually, Europe is in some of these domains leading and has some of the best assets. In some others, we have lost the race already, or we are not anymore leading. But in some, we are really leading, and this is great. So yes, this value is recognized for economic reasons, for strategic reasons, for diplomacy reasons, for defense reasons. So in many domains, space has been really an integral part of daily life. And yes, in the United States and in China, this is much more forcefully advanced. The United States spends about 7 times the amount of public funding in space than Europe. In China, you cannot compare the money because the currency value is different, but the output is extremely impressive. And yes, I see this growing extremely fast, not so fast in Europe. And this is what I want to achieve, that Europe grows at least at the same speed, if not faster, because I would like that we stay on top of this competition and we keep the leadership which we have today.
And is it only about money, about investing, as you mentioned, the public fundings?
There's certainly a strong economic aspect. Let me again take the US and the private companies in this case. Take Elon Musk as an example. Do you think he is building rockets just for fun? There's a huge business behind. Do you think he's building Starlink, the internet constellation, just for fun? There's a huge economic interest behind, and a strategic interest, because he wants to make sure that for his cars, Tesla cars, he has an autonomous communication system in place which cannot be disturbed, and which is certainly an asset which he needs, but also he wants to be sure that he can launch these satellites with his own rockets. So there's a whole vertical integration happening right now in the commercial sector. And yes, Europe needs to take note of what happens and make a step upward. Otherwise, we lose the race.
Although I would say that Elon is having so much fun right now, I would say.
I'm sure he has.
We've been talking mostly about the Agenda 25 and the story for 2035. Can you imagine for a while the year 2060, for example? Is Europe, ESA, for example, is the world leader, can be the world leader, ESA, Europe, in the space industry and space exploration?
The good news is that we have the capability to be a world leader. The question is whether politicians have the courage to make bold decisions. Let me take another example, not 500 years back now, but 50 years back. At the beginning of the 60s, 1961, JFK stood up in front of Rice University, and you all have heard the speech a few times, saying that he wants that America is sending a man to the moon and safely back before the end of this decade. Not because it is easy, because it is hard. These are his words. And he has, with these statements, with this speech, he has given a vision to the American people that they want to be on the moon first and fast. And this has triggered a lot of technology and companies to succeed. Some people even claim that some of the IT companies, at that time IBM, Hewlett-Packard, and some of those companies, have been dominating the world because of these investments in space and the Apollo program. And some of it even created other new companies, and today's biggest IT and software companies are in the US, so many of them are in the US. They are not directly coming from the Apollo program, but the fascination for space, technology, informatics of the young people has certainly created a pool of people that have been driven by this entrepreneur spirit, but also by the education that they took. And yes, it needs world leaders. It needs leaders in Europe, the leaders of our governments, to stand up in front of the people and say, I have an ambition and I want to go there. Coming back to your question of 2060, yes, we can be a world leader if we have the courage to invest and to make a step forward.
Would it make it a change to have a European launch pad, or basically, the place to launch rockets here in Europe? Because that's one of the latest news related to European space program, that in Germany there might be a possibility to build a private, basically, launch pad. Would it be the change, like
Can this project be the those game changers?
The game changer, yeah.
Let me remind you that we do have a European launch,
of course, yes,
spaceport, as we call it, which is in Kourou, in French Guiana. It is European, so therefore fully under European control, if I may say so, and it's working extremely well. We are launching all our rockets from there, Ariane, Vega, and also Soyuz. It works very well. I think your question is more, do we need another one, maybe for smaller rockets? And there are several projects that are being discussed in Europe, in Germany, but also in the UK, in Portugal, in some northern countries. So yes, this discussion is ongoing right now. Do we need it or not? We should not compare, I would say, some of these new launch pads for smaller rockets with Kourou, because Kourou is the big airport, or the big spaceport in this case, and you should rather compare the big spaceport with, let's say, Frankfurt Airport, with some smaller regional airports where you have, of course, a smaller aircraft in the air business, and in the space business, smaller rockets. So yes, there may be a use for some of the smaller ones, not too many, because we have an oversupply actually of proposals, but they serve very different purposes and they should be complementary.
The Czech Republic has been a member state of ESA for 13 years now, and there is a ESA, situated in Prague now. Where do you see the future of the Space Czech Republic?
The Space Czech Republic is a relatively young member of ESA. 13 years is, okay, some may consider it a lot, but in space terms, this is a relatively young member state, but a very dynamic one and a very good one. There's a lot of very skilled people with ideas, quite a few of them creating their own little company, having their own businesses, SME, startups, which are being created. In fact, we have a business incubation center here in Prague, one in Brno. And there's a lot of dynamism and a lot of energy which happens in these companies. So it's a very dynamic place. Actually, the Czech Republic has a good mix of investments in hardware, that means in spacecraft components, also hubs, high altitude pseudo-satellites, which fly in the stratosphere, but a lot in the downstream sector to convert data into information. And that actually is a very dynamic, a very fast-growing sector. And I think the Czech Republic is well placed in investing in this portion because there's a lot of dynamism and also connection with the IT industry. So I see the Czech Republic developing nicely. I should also say that in discussions with the head of the Czech delegation to ESA, Mr. Václav Kubera, he recently has expressed a willingness to increase his contributions to ESA and to increase the programs which we have in ESA quite significantly, and I'm very impressed and very grateful for that. So yes, I see a lot of energy here in the Czech Republic, and of course it is our job as ESA to help you in the Czech Republic to convert this into opportunities in terms of technology, but also in the business sense, and to create assets in the Czech Republic. So young, but very dynamic and very active country.
Thank you.
Great. We're quite proud of your answer, actually. Thank you very much for your time. It was a great pleasure to have you here and actually meet in ESPA headquarters here in Prague. So hopefully we can do this kind of interview in some, let's say, regularly, maybe to
in
cover
4 years, for example,
yeah.
2025, then 2035.
It should be earlier than that, I hope. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
3, 2, 1, top.
Tak, to byly další Czech Space News, které vznikají ve spolupráci agentury Czech Invest a Ministerstva dopravy. Děkujeme, že jste poslouchali a my už samozřejmě pro vás připravujeme další rozhovory a další podcasty.
A pokud nechcete, aby vám to všechno uniklo, tak nás neváhejte sledovat na Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube a všude tam, kde jste zkrátka zvyklí poslouchat. Webovky jsou czechspacenews.cz a případně máme i Instagram, kde umístujeme další novinky Czech Space News, a nebo můžete sledovat i sociální sítě Českého kosmického portálu.
Ještě jednou děkujeme za poslech a budeme se těšit příště.
Czech Space News vám přináší agentura Czech Invest a Ministerstvo dopravy.